The sound of wind presses gently against the glass panes of the mansion, high up on Belmont Ridge. Rain gathers in quiet rivulets down the windows, steady and soft, like breath. Inside, everything is still, still like a museum, still like morning. No laughter, no footsteps, no music. Just the slow hum of a filtered air system, whispering through vents in the corners of rooms that once knew life. Rooms that now hold only memory. Danvers Maddox, the trillionaire tech titan with silver hair and colder eyes, stands at the head of a grand hallway, back straight, arms folded. His watch ticks, and with it, something behind his ribs, a memory maybe, or the ache of time. He's been standing there for 4 minutes and 20 seconds, not moving, just listening, nothing. He turns and walks away. Behind one of the closed doors, hidden from view, are 5 little children, all his, quintuplets, age 6. Born into money, into silence, into loss. They don't speak. Not to him, not to anyone. Danvers built this home for them. After his wife, Lillian, died giving birth to them, he built it like a fortress. Every corner curated, every corridor engineered, monitored, sanitized, controlled. But nothing he built could make them smile. He tried. Private therapists, specialists from Geneva, music rooms with hand-built violins, a horse from Spain. None of it worked. Each nanny stayed no more than a week, except the last one. She didn't even last a day. Danvers scrolls through footage on his phone as he walks into the marble kitchen. 5 children running like windstorms, wild with rage. One throws an untouched meal at the wall. Another locks herself in a cabinet. The smallest of them, Elias, crouches behind a chair, holding a crumpled cloth against his ear like it's a lifeline. Danvers sighs. He looks up at his security manager. "Make the call." "Sir?" "The agency." Again, the man nods and steps away. Danvers turns toward the garden, watching the trees sway like slow dancers. The rain taps on the window like it's knocking to be let in. He stares at it. For a moment, he wonders if the children even notice the weather. He doubts it. They don't cry. They don't ask. They just exist. He pours black coffee into a glass mug and sips, even though it's already gone lukewarm. By evening, the new maid arrives. No resume, no references, just sent by the agency in an act of desperation. A woman named Grace. She stands at the edge of the kitchen, soaked from the rain, holding nothing but a folded umbrella and a small canvas bag. She doesn't smile. She doesn't fidget. She simply stands, waiting to be seen. Danvers looks up. She is younger than he expected. Late 20s, modestly dressed, calm eyes. Not the kind of calm that comes from training, but from something older, something lived. "You're here for the job," he says flatly. "If the children will have me." Danvers narrows his eyes. "They won't." Grace doesn't blink. "Then I will stay until they ask me to leave." He watches her carefully. "Do you have any experience?" "No." "Degrees? Certifications?" "No, sir." He shifts in place. "Then why did they send you?" "I don't know," she says softly. "But I prayed this morning, and your name came to me." Danvers frowns. "I don't believe in prayer." She lowers her eyes. "That's all right. I brought enough for both of us." He wants to scoff, but he doesn't. He just points toward the west wing. "They're in the playroom. Security will monitor you. If anything happens, they'll intervene." Grace nods. "Thank you. And don't get too close," he adds, his voice dropping. "They bite." She pauses. "I've known grief that bites harder." Then she disappears down the hall. He stares after her. He does not understand her. And yet, he feels something shift in the house the moment she turns the corner. The playroom is not playful. It's wide, clean, cold. 5 small chairs, 5 untouched toys, a huge aquarium wall filled with silent fish, and 5 children scattered in different corners, like islands that forgot they were once part of the same land. Grace enters quietly. She doesn't speak. She doesn't ask their names. She sits on the floor by the door and pulls something from her canvas bag. A notebook. She opens it and begins to write. The children glance at her. Brief. Barely. She hums. Softly. Not a song with words, just breathy tones that ride the rain still tapping against the glass. She hums like she's not there to be heard, like she's remembering something. One of the girls, Mira, turns her head slightly, but nothing else. Grace keeps humming, and writing, and sitting. By dinner, she hasn't moved. She leaves the room only when one of the boys, Elijah, walks up and places a toy next to her notebook. She looks at him, not startled, not excited, just grateful. "Thank you," she whispers. He doesn't reply. She leaves the toy there. When Danvers sees the footage later that night, he leans closer to the screen, rewinds, watches the moment again. The toy placed beside the notebook, the look exchanged. He zooms in, he watches it again, and again, then slowly shuts the tablet. The next morning, Grace returns to the same spot. She sits, she writes, she hums. When Mira crawls closer, Grace doesn't move. When Elijah sits beside her, she doesn't look. When the smallest, Elias, places her hand in his tiny fingers curled like trust, Grace closes her notebook and holds him. Rain falls again that night, and for the first time in years, Danvers Maddox dreams of Lillian, her voice humming in a kitchen that once held warmth, her hands brushing crumbs from 5 high chairs, her eyes full of something he buried too long ago. In the dream, she whispers, "They don't need another professional, Danvers. They need presence." He wakes up in sweat and silence. He goes to the camera feed, the playroom, the couch. Grace asleep, sitting up, Elias curled into her side. The other 4 children scattered around her, close, as if drawn to breath, as if trusting the warmth of her stillness. Danvers lowers the tablet. He doesn't know what to feel, but deep down, beneath all his systems, his grief, his logic, something shifts. A single breath, like the first sign of life after too long underwater, and he wonders, what did she write in that notebook? The morning is pale. Mist clings to the mansion windows like hands that don't want to let go. The garden is quiet. The wind has softened. The world feels like it's holding its breath. Danvers Maddox stands in his private study, a room lined with screens, contracts, and trophies no one sees but him. On the largest screen is the live feed of the playroom. He watches without blinking. 5 children, 1 woman, Grace. They are still asleep. He watches Elias stir first, the smallest. He lifts his head from her lap like a kitten unsure of its safety. Grace doesn't move. She just slowly opens her eyes, as if she knew the exact second he would wake. No alarm clock, no spoken word, only presence. Danvers turns off the screen. He doesn't know why. He doesn't want to admit that something in that image made his throat tighten. Instead, he calls his assistant. "See if the agency has anyone else." "I don't trust unverified staff." "Sir, she's still under probation. I want a background check. Quiet. Everything. School, medical, social. And someone track her notebook entries. I want to know what she's writing." "Yes, Mr. Maddox." He ends the call. And yet, he can't stop the echo in his mind. They need presence. Down in the West Wing, Grace rises from the floor and stretches slowly, careful not to disturb the children still curled near her. She walks barefoot across the padded carpet to the small kitchenette built into the room. She fills a kettle, hums while it boils. One by one, the children wake. They don't speak, but they watch her. There is no instruction, no coaxing, only routine. Elijah places their toy back on the shelf. Mira folds the soft blanket they had all huddled under. Elias trails behind Grace like a shadow with feet. Grace sips warm tea and sets a tiny notebook on the floor. She doesn't write in it today. Instead, she opens it to a page with 5 carefully drawn boxes. No names, no dates, just boxes. She slides the notebook across the floor toward them and leaves a pencil beside it. Then she walks to the window and sits on the floor facing the rain. Danvers watches this on the feed again. "What are you doing?" he mutters. But the children move. One by one, they come to the notebook. Elijah picks up the pencil, draws something in the first box, a circle with 5 dots inside it. He sets the pencil down. Mira adds to the second. A crooked heart. Elias draws a wobbly cloud. The others don't draw, but they touch the page. Danvers watches. The notebook stays on the floor all day. By evening, it's filled with soft graphite marks, not scribbles, but attempts, traces, little proofs of will. At dinner, Grace enters the kitchen to prepare their meals, not because she's told to, but because she senses what they like. She's seen what they leave behind on plates. She adapts. She warms soup, slowly, stirring with the patience of someone who knows time is part of the recipe. The children eat on the floor beside her. No high chairs. No cameras in their faces. No demands. Just space. Danvers doesn't join. He watches from the screen in his office, arms crossed, jaw tight. "She's not following any schedule," he says to his assistant. "No, sir. She's letting them eat without structure." "Yes, sir. And they're not even using their own rooms." "No, sir." Danvers pauses. "And yet, they're sleeping." The assistant says nothing. "Send her the formal schedule," Danvers orders. "If she's staying, she'll follow the house's structure." That night, the printed schedule is slid under Grace's door. She sees it when she wakes to the sound of Elias coughing lightly in his sleep. She doesn't touch it. Instead, she wraps a blanket around the boy and hums a soft lullaby. The same tune as before, a tune that sounds older than words. The next morning, Danvers waits, watching, expecting rebellion. But Grace does not ignore the schedule. She folds it, places it beside her tea. Then, after the children eat, she gently holds up the paper to them, points to the 9 a.m. slot. Story time. She doesn't speak, just opens a page in her notebook, draws a house, a big one. Then she draws 5 small windows. Inside each window, a pair of soft eyes. Then she adds a figure outside the house, someone with a bag, hair tied back, eyes calm. The children stare. Then Mira takes the pencil and draws a sun in the top corner. Danvers sees this, doesn't understand it. But for the first time in years, he doesn't feel angry about what he doesn't understand. He feels curious. Later that day, he finds himself wandering the hallway near the playroom. He doesn't enter, just listens. Silence, but not the cold kind. It's the kind of silence that feels full. Full of presence, breath, being. He backs away. In the foyer, he pauses by a shelf where an old photo still stands. Lillian, pregnant, laughing, holding her round belly with both hands. She's standing in the same garden where the children now refuse to play. He hasn't touched the garden since she died. No one has. And yet, the next morning, Grace takes the children outside. Not all at once. Just one. Elijah. She stands with him in the soft grass. Says nothing. He watches a ladybug crawl up her finger. She shows it to him. Elijah looks, then reaches out. The ladybug climbs onto his. Inside the house, Danvers sees this on the monitor. He stands, walks to the glass doors overlooking the garden, and watches in real time. He doesn't go out. He doesn't open the door, but he watches Elijah, his son, the boy who never made eye contact, who screamed when touched, now holding a living thing, still, gentle, focused. A breath leaves Danvers without permission. By late afternoon, 2 more children follow Grace to the garden. Elias clutches a twig like a sword. Mira collects yellow leaves. No one speaks, but no one cries. And when the sun begins to set, all 5 are sitting on the grass beside Grace, heads tilted, listening to the rustling wind. Inside, Danvers leans against the doorframe. His hand trembles slightly. He doesn't notice. In the playroom that evening, Grace hums again. The children settle around her, their heads on her lap, shoulders touching. She writes in her notebook again, but this time, she lets them see the words. Elias traces a letter with his tiny finger. E. He presses his lips together, and for the first time in his short, quiet life, he says it. Just the letter. E. Danvers drops his glass in the hallway. It shatters. No one hears. He slowly walks back to his office, watches the playback, over and over again. Elias saying, E. The first thread of sound from his child. The beginning of a name. Danvers sits down, his face still, but his eyes, they begin to burn. A tear rolls without ceremony. He doesn't stop it. The next day, he doesn't issue any instructions. He doesn't order any reports. He just watches, in silence and in awe, because something impossible is happening in the quiet corners of his house. Not through protocol, not through programs, but through presence, and the woman who carries it like light. Grace. The house breathes differently now. Not loudly, not with fanfare, just a small shift, like the way early spring starts with the scent of wet soil before any flowers bloom. It begins in the hallway. Danvers steps softly. He doesn't tell himself to. He just does. as though something sacred is unfolding beyond the walls and he must not disturb it. At the far end, laughter, not loud, not sharp, just breathy, almost a sound. Elijah, not speaking, but chasing his own reflection in a hallway mirror, a game he invented yesterday with Grace, a game she never named, never interrupted. He taps the glass, runs away, taps again. Mira watches from the side, smiling. Danvers pauses behind the doorframe, out of sight. He doesn't breathe, he just listens. And for the first time in years, the silence inside him feels less like a tomb and more like a womb. Something new is growing. That evening, Grace lights a candle. Not because the power is out, the Maddox estate has 3 backup generators, but because she believes light should be chosen sometimes, not just automated. The children sit in a circle. Grace takes out her notebook. Not to write, but to tear a page from it. She folds it once, then again, then again. A paper bird. She hands it to Mira. Mira doesn't speak, but her eyes soften. Elias reaches for another page. Grace nods. He folds one too. Sloppy, crumpled, but a bird all the same. Soon, 5 paper birds fill the candlelit circle. Grace begins to hum. Then, the softest whisper from Mira. Again, Grace stops humming, looks up. Mira stares at her, eyes wide, lips parted, waiting. She spoke. Danvers hears the playback that night on the camcorder he had installed secretly in the playroom last month, the one even security doesn't know about. He rewinds, plays it again, just one word, but it breaks something in him, and mends something else. He stands from his chair, walks toward the study doors, stops, then turns back, sits. He can't walk into that room yet, but he can listen, and that is new. The next morning, Grace arrives in the kitchen before dawn. The children are still asleep. The world is blue and quiet. She makes tea, then walks into the garden. It rained the night before. Everything smells alive. She crouches near the smallest flower bed and places 5 small stones in a row, 1 for each child. Then 1 more. She stares at it. The 6th stone. Her fingers tremble. Danvers watches from the upstairs window. He doesn't know why he's awake so early. But there's something about the way she kneels that reminds him of Lillian. The way her head bows. The way she doesn't rush. When the children wake, they find her humming beside the stones. No toys, no screens, just earth and breath. Elias reaches her first. He crouches beside the stones, traces them with his finger. "Bird," he says. Grace turns, smiles. "Bird," she repeats, gently. Behind them, Danvers leans against the glass. His heart clenches, not just at the word, but at the memory of Lillian holding a toy bird, years ago, whispering, "If we have a daughter, I want her to love the quiet things." And now, here, in his garden, his child has spoken a word about a quiet thing. He steps back. That night, something changes. Danvers does something he hasn't done in 6 years. He opens Lillian's study. It's still exactly as she left it. Books on child psychology, handwritten notes about the pregnancy, drawings she made during bed rest. He finds a notebook. The cover is cracked. Inside, a list of names. He reads them. Not the names they ended up using, the middle ones, the ones Lillian had picked for her own secret reasons. He closes the book, holds it to his chest. The next day, Grace finds a sealed envelope slipped under her door. Her name is written on it in delicate cursive. She opens it. Inside a page from Lillian's notebook. 5 names, 5 middle names. And below it, a simple note in Danvers' stiff handwriting. "She would have wanted you to know." Grace smiles quietly. That morning, she calls each child by their middle name. Elijah turns. Elias touches his chest. Mira nods. They know. They've always known. But no one ever used those names before. Now, the names belong again. Danvers watches this moment from his study. He doesn't speak. He doesn't move. But his hands slowly unclench, 1 finger at a time. And down in the garden, Elias looks up at Grace and says, "Mama," just a whisper, unsure, hopeful. Grace looks at him, breath caught in her chest. She doesn't answer immediately. She kneels, opens her arms. He runs into them. The others follow. 5 children, 1 woman. Rain begins to fall, soft and silver. Danvers walks to the door, puts his hand on the handle, and for the first time, he opens it. The door creaks. Not from age. Danvers Maddox has a fleet of architects who ensure that nothing creaks in his home, but from hesitation, from time. And yet, it opens. He steps out into the rain for the first time in years. The children are in the garden, soaked. Their shoes are off. The grass is wet and glistening beneath small toes. Mira spins slowly with her arms out like she's trying to remember what wings feel like. Elijah builds a little mound of mud and places his paper bird on top of it like a statue on a hill. Elias sits in Grace's lap, her hand resting gently on his head. They don't see him at first, but Grace does. She turns, doesn't smile, doesn't panic, just nods once, like she already knew this moment was coming. Danvers takes one step, then another. The rain is soft, warm, the kind of rain that feels more like memory than weather. Mira sees him. She stops spinning. Elijah freezes. The others follow, all eyes on him now. Danvers stops a few paces away. He looks down at them, his children, as if seeing them for the first time. Not as burdens, not as medical puzzles, but as people, as echoes of Lillian, as something alive and unfinished. Grace stands slowly, Elias still in her arms. She says nothing. Danvers' voice is stiff, unused. "You'll catch cold." "They're warm," she replies. "You can feel it." He hesitates. Then, slowly, kneels. The grass presses wet against his knees. His trousers stain immediately, but he doesn't move, doesn't brush it off. He looks at Elias. Then Mira. None of them reach for him, but none of them run. That's enough for now. He nods once, slowly. "You may continue." He stands again, turns to go, but then a tug at his coat. Elijah, looking up, holding the paper bird. Danvers blinks, looks down at it. Elijah lifts it toward him. Danvers hesitates, then, with a trembling hand, takes the bird. The paper is soft, worn, folded by little fingers. Danvers looks at Elijah, and Elijah smiles. It's a tiny smile, barely there, but it destroys something in Danvers, something cold and ancient. He almost drops the bird, but he doesn't. He holds it to his chest and walks back inside without another word. That night, the children fall asleep in a pile beside Grace. She doesn't hum tonight. She simply breathes and lets them match her breath. One by one, they drift. Danvers watches from the hallway. No cameras now. He doesn't need them. He knows the rhythm now. He's learning their pulse. He leaves quietly and walks into his wife's old study again. The scent of her is fading, but some things linger. Her scarf, her dried flowers, the photograph tucked into a forgotten book. He picks up her old notebook. This time, he doesn't skim. He reads. Every page. Notes about the babies before they were born. Her fears, her prayers. "I don't care if they talk or run or sing," she wrote once. "I just want them to feel safe, to know presence." He closes the book, inhales slowly. The next morning, the staff arrive to find muddy footprints in the hall, from little feet. Danvers doesn't scold anyone. Instead, he sits in the playroom for the first time. It's early. The children are still asleep. Grace looks at him from across the room, doesn't say a word. He sits on the edge of the couch, hands on his lap. He clears his throat. "May I?" Grace nods. He doesn't finish the question. He just sits. An hour passes. He says nothing. The children wake one by one. And when Elias crawls across the rug and leans his head on his father's knee, Danvers does not flinch. He places his hand stiffly on the boy's back and keeps it there. He doesn't know what to say, but his breath is steady. And for now, that's enough. Later that week, Grace opens her notebook and finds a new page added. Different handwriting. Blocky. Precise. Danvers. "I don't know how to fold birds," the note says, "but I want to try." She closes the notebook, presses it to her heart, and smiles, because the house of systems and silence is starting to soften, not because of force, but because love, the patient kind, doesn't knock down walls. It melts them, quietly, from within. The walls of the mansion no longer echo, they absorb. Laughter doesn't yet ring through the hallways like a bell, not yet, but there are sounds now. Small sounds. The clink of spoons in shared cereal bowls. The shuffle of 5 small sets of feet down padded corridors. the occasional burst of a syllable half-formed, but no longer afraid. And Grace, always barefoot, always carrying warmth in her silences. She moves through the house like she was always meant to be there, like her presence grew up through the floorboards, gently wrapping itself around the children's hearts. Danvers doesn't speak to her often, but he watches her, not through screens anymore. From doorways, from his seat by the garden window, from the hallway, one foot inside their new world and one still outside. He hasn't left the house in weeks. No board meetings, no flights. He cancels them all with a single line. My children are speaking. I need to listen. No one questions him. No one dares. In the playroom, Mira starts humming one of Grace's tunes while drawing with a crayon. Elijah joins in with the same breathy notes. Elias doesn't hum, he claps instead, off rhythm, but in joy. For them, it's a symphony. Grace claps too, then pauses. Should we go outside? 5 heads nod. This time, no hesitation. In the garden, they find the row of stones again. Elias crouches beside the 6th one, the one that has no name. Grace kneels beside him. What's this one for? He asks. Danvers hears the question from the kitchen window. He stiffens. Grace doesn't answer right away. She lets Elias touch the stone. Then she whispers, for someone who isn't here, but still belongs. The boy nods slowly. Is it Mama? Grace looks up. Danvers is at the door now. He doesn't step out, but he watches. Grace nods. Yes, your Mama. Elias looks back at the stone, then back at his father. Does Papa miss her? Danvers exhales, frozen by the question. His knuckles whiten around the doorframe. Grace doesn't speak. She turns to look at him too. So do the children. He knows what they're asking without words. Not just if he misses Lillian, but if he feels. If he's still in there. He steps out, slowly. He walks to them. Kneels beside the stone. His voice when it comes is low and cracked. Every day. Mira moves toward him. Her small hand reaches out, hesitates, then gently rests on his shoulder. He doesn't move. But he doesn't flinch either. Can we make something for her? Elijah asks. Danvers looks at Grace. She gives the faintest nod. Yes, Danvers says. Yes, we can. That afternoon, the mansion becomes a workshop. A quiet one. No screens, no machines. Just hands, paper, crayons, yarn. Grace brings down a box from her room filled with scraps and ribbons and dried leaves. They make a wreath. 5 sets of small hands place bits of themselves into it. A favorite drawing, a piece of cloth from Elias's old blanket, a broken toy part that Elijah refuses to throw away. Danvers watches. Then, carefully, adds something too. A photo. Lillian holding the newborns. She's tired, smiling, radiant. He doesn't say where he found it. He just tucks it into the center of the wreath. They hang it above the 6th stone in the garden. Grace lights a small candle. Nobody speaks. But something passes through them all, a wave of recognition. A stillness full of presence. Danvers puts his hand on Elias's shoulder. It stays there. Longer this time. The next morning, a surprise arrives at the front gate. A white van. The agency. Grace answers the door. The children behind her like little birds tucked behind their mother. The man at the door looks puzzled. We came to retrieve the temporary hire. Grace, is it? Danvers appears behind them. No. The man turns. Sir, the agency contract was... She's not temporary, Danvers says. She was never on permanent placement. She is now. Grace blinks. She looks up at Danvers. He clears his throat. We'll handle her employment privately. The man hesitates, then nods and leaves. Grace closes the door gently. Danvers doesn't look at her, but he says, You're not a maid, not anymore. That's not what they need. She nods once. I know. He walks away, but as he turns the corner, she hears him say, They need a mother. That night, Grace finds something tucked beneath her pillow. Not a toy, not a note, a key to the nursery. The one that's been locked since the day Lillian died. No one has entered in 6 years. Grace walks to the room in silence. The door opens slowly. The room is untouched. Blankets folded, crib sheets faded with time. And above the crib 5 names painted on the wall in Lillian's handwriting. Elijah, Mira, Elias, Noah, Arya. Grace steps inside, lights the single lamp. She stands there for a long time. then closes the door behind her and begins to sing. The nursery glows with the soft amber light of the bedside lamp. Dust hangs in the air like a blessing, not a burden, tiny particles catching the light, dancing slowly, like they've waited years to be disturbed again. Grace doesn't rush. She touches nothing at first, just stands in the doorway, listening. It's a sacred quiet, the kind that carries memory. The crib in the corner still has a folded baby blanket inside, hand-stitched, with little embroidered birds. Above it, Lillian's handwriting, fading now, spells each child's name in soft green paint. 5 names, and 1 space. Blank, unfinished. Grace's eyes sting. She sits on the edge of the rocking chair and opens her notebook, then slowly tears out 1 page. On it, she writes a single name, Lillian. She folds the page into a paper bird and places it on the windowsill. Outside, the rain returns, not harsh, just steady, a rhythm, like breath. Down the hall, the children sleep. Elias has curled up on the rug in the playroom, thumb tucked in his fist. Mira holds the same crayon she wouldn't let go of since yesterday. Noah, the quietest, breathes deeply beside a toy giraffe. Danvers is still awake. He sits in the kitchen with the lights off. Only the under-cabinet glow remains. He's nursing a cup of tea untouched. He hears the soft creak of the nursery door and knows Grace is there. He doesn't move. He doesn't want to intrude, but after a while, he walks down the hall. The door is cracked open. He peeks in. Grace is asleep in the rocking chair, head tilted to the side, arms crossed over her chest, breathing soft. Danvers steps inside, looks around the room. He runs his hand along the edge of the crib, fingers brushing the wood like it's a relic. His throat tightens. His eyes land on the paper bird at the window. He picks it up, unfolds it, and sees the name, Lillian. He doesn't cry, but he sits down on the floor and stays there. The next morning, Grace wakes to the sound of footsteps, tiny ones. The children have found the nursery. They enter like pilgrims. No one speaks. They move slowly, reverently, as if they know this room belongs to something sacred. Elijah walks straight to the crib, runs his hand across the faded paint. Elias picks up the paper bird and holds it close to his chest. Mira climbs into Grace's lap without a word. Danvers stands by the window, arms crossed. He watches them, all of them, not like a man observing a moment, but like a man realizing he's part of one. Later that day, Grace finds the children in the hallway with yarn and tape and a pair of safety scissors. She doesn't ask. She just watches. They're making more birds, like the one she made for Lillian. Paper, cloth, some messy, some neat. They hang them from the hallway ceiling like stars. Danvers walks through later and stops mid-stride. The birds sway gently as he passes. He looks up, whispers, "She would have loved this," and keeps walking. That night, dinner is different. The long dining table isn't empty. For the first time, Danvers sits at the head. The children gather around. Grace sets down a pot of warm stew. They eat in silence at first. Then, Mira giggles when Elias drops his spoon. Danvers looks up, surprised. Elijah grins. And slowly, laughter grows. It's clumsy, awkward, but real. Danvers chuckles. Just once. But it's enough. Grace watches him. He catches her gaze. He nods. A thank you without words. After dinner, the children beg to sleep in the nursery. Danvers agrees. He lays out sleeping bags with them. Grace hums as she dims the lights. Danvers doesn't leave. He sits by the doorway as they drift off, arms resting on his knees. He watches them, all 5, then turns to Grace. "I forgot," he whispers. She tilts her head. "I forgot how to be their father. You're remembering now." Danvers looks down. "When Lillian died, everything inside me just froze. I told myself I had to be strong, build systems, hire experts, but I never realized they didn't need systems. They needed someone who could stay through the storm." Grace doesn't answer. She just reaches over and places her hand over his. Not tightly, just enough. He breathes, and for the first time, it doesn't hurt. Later, in the hallway, Danvers stops beside the paper birds. They dance in the draft from the window. He watches one spin slowly and catch the light. He closes his eyes and whispers, "Thank you." To whom, he isn't sure, but he means it. That night, the house does not sleep in silence. It sleeps in peace. Morning comes slowly. Light slips between the curtains of the nursery in thin golden threads. It lands on Mira's cheek, on Elijah's curled fingers, on the tip of Grace's hair where she sleeps, leaning against the rocking chair. Danvers is the first to wake. He doesn't rush. He doesn't leave. He sits on the floor beside Elias, who has turned in the night and now sleeps with one hand resting on Danvers's knee like a claim, like trust. Danvers closes his eyes and just listens to the sound of breath. 5 little bodies breathing in rhythm, and for once, he allows himself to feel it. All of it. The weight. The beauty. The second chance. Later, in the kitchen, he makes breakfast. Not the chef, not the staff. Him. He burns the toast. Twice. Pours too much juice in one of the cups. But when Grace enters with sleepy eyes and bare feet, she doesn't laugh. She just smiles and begins cutting fruit beside him. For a moment, they move around each other like they've done it for years, not speaking, just moving, a rhythm born of peace. The children stumble in one by one, eyes puffy, dragging blankets. They don't run. They don't hide. They sit and eat. And Elijah leans against his father's arm while chewing. Danvers places his hand on the boy's back without thinking. It stays there. After breakfast, Grace takes them out to the garden. They plant. A new bed of soil. Grace hands each child a seed. Life starts small, she says softly. Elias buries his in the dirt and pats it like a secret. Noah pours water. Mira hums while placing hers gently in the earth. Danvers stands behind them all, arms folded, but not in his old way, not defensive, just watching, open, still learning. Later, Grace writes in her notebook while the children nap. Danvers sees her in the sunroom, pen moving slowly, her eyes full of thought. He approaches quietly. "May I?" She looks up. "Of course." He sits beside her, watches her finish a sentence. "What are you writing?" he asks. She closes the notebook halfway. "A memory. Yours?" She nods. "And theirs." He glances at the cover. It's worn now, edges soft, like a book that's been carried close for a long time. "I used to think memories were a burden," he says quietly. "I didn't want to remember anything. Not Lillian's laughter, not the day we brought them home, not her voice in the kitchen, because every time I remembered, I felt like I was breaking. And now?" He looks at her. "At least I'm breaking open, not apart." Grace closes the notebook completely and places it between them. "It's all right to remember," she says. "That's how healing finds us." He nods. Quiet. That afternoon, the children gather for story time. This time, Danvers reads. His voice is unsure at first, clumsy, but the children lean in. They don't care that he stumbles over words or pauses too often. They just care that he stays, that he's present. When he closes the book, there's silence. Then Mira whispers, "Another." He opens to the next page and begins again. Outside, the rain comes back. Not harsh, just steady, always steady. In the hallway, the paper birds sway. In the garden, the seeds rest in their new beds. The 6th stone still stands. The wreath still hangs. That night, Danvers stands in the doorway of the nursery as the children fall asleep. He doesn't enter. Not yet. He just watches. Grace moves quietly among them, tucking blankets, pressing kisses to foreheads, whispering names like prayers. When she reaches the door, he steps back, lets her pass. She pauses. "Thank you," he says. "For what?" "For giving them back to me." She looks at him, really looks, and in her gaze, he sees something he hasn't seen in years. Not pity, not admiration, but belief. "I didn't give them back," she says. "They were never gone, you just stopped looking." He nods. The truth stings, but it also heals. He turns to the room again, then walks inside. He kneels by the crib, not because a child is in it, but because he needs to. He places his hand on the wood and whispers, "I'm sorry." Outside, the rain softens to a drizzle. Inside, the silence isn't empty. It's full, full of memories, of breath, of presence, and of love growing, patient, and finally allowed. The morning air smells different, fresh, damp, alive. The garden is quiet, but not silent. There's movement beneath the soil now, seeds shifting, roots exploring. Life has taken root. Quietly, without ceremony, inside the mansion, something similar blooms. Danvers no longer watches from behind glass. He walks barefoot now, down the same hallways he once built like fortresses. He doesn't call for staff as much. He makes coffee himself. The children run past him, and he doesn't flinch. He steps aside, lets them race, lets their joy echo. They're not wild anymore. They're free. Grace walks beside him most mornings now. Not out of duty, not because of orders, but because that's what they do. Sometimes they speak, sometimes they don't. This morning, she brings him something. A box. Inside, small fragments of the past. A half-finished lullaby Lillian had written in the back of a cookbook. A hair clip. A hand-drawn list of names the children gave to imaginary animals when they were toddlers. Grace found them in the attic. She says she only meant to sweep, but something told her to look higher. Danvers holds the paper with the lullaby. He recognizes the melody. "She used to hum this," he says softly, "when she thought I was asleep." "She wasn't humming to put you to sleep," Grace replies. "She was humming so you wouldn't forget how to dream." Danvers doesn't respond, but his throat tightens. That evening, as the children gather in the nursery, Danvers brings in something of his own, a small tape recorder, old, analog, the kind Lillian used to carry when she was journaling ideas for children's books. He presses play. The tape crackles. Then a voice, Lillian's, gentle, breathy, mid-sentence. "And if they don't like the new song, we'll just write another. As long as they know they're safe, I'll keep singing." The tape cuts out. The children stare. Then Elias, the one who spoke the least, whispers, "Mama?" Danvers closes his eyes. "Yes," he says. "Yes, that was Mama." The children gather around him. He doesn't tell them to. They just do. He opens his arms. They come, all five. Grace watches from the hallway. She doesn't join them. She lets the moment be theirs. Later, when the house is still and moonlight softens the staircase, Danvers finds her sitting at the top step. She's holding her notebook. He sits beside her. She doesn't hide the page this time. He sees it. A sketch of the children, messy, warm, alive. Scribbled above their heads, "Home isn't a place, it's a becoming." Danvers speaks after a while. "I never believed in healing. I thought it was just something people said to make the grief quieter." Grace looks up. "And now? I think healing doesn't ask you to forget. It just asks you to remember differently." They sit in silence after that, until Mira pads up the stairs in her nightdress, dragging a blanket behind her. She crawls into Danvers' lap without a word. He holds her. Then Grace. Then Elijah joins them. Then Noah. Then Elias. One by one, until all of them sit at the top of the staircase, a pile of warmth and limbs and breath. Danvers looks down at them. Then up at Grace. "I want to make it permanent." "What do you mean?" "You," he says. "Them. This." She says nothing. He continues. "Not just a job, not just a title, something more." Grace meets his gaze. Soft, steady. "I'm not here for a title, Danvers. I'm here because I was called." He nods. "I know, but I want to answer that call too." He reaches into his pocket, pulls out a small velvet box. Grace blinks, but he opens it not to reveal a ring. Inside is a key. "To the entire house," he says. She stares at it. "I want you to have access to everything. Not because I need help running the house, but because they trust you. And now, so do I." She doesn't take the key right away. She just looks at him. "Are you ready for what this means?" she asks. "Yes. It means no hiding. I'm tired of hiding." She nods once. Takes the key. In her hand, it feels warm, alive, like a promise. That night, Danvers doesn't return to his study. He sleeps on the couch in the nursery. Mira curled up on one side, Noah on the other. Grace watches him breathe. She doesn't write tonight. She just stands at the door and lets the moment rest in the quiet. Before closing the light, she looks at the 6th stone outside the window. Rain glistens on it under moonlight, and for the first time, she doesn't feel it as absence. She feels it as presence. Lillian is here, not in body, but in what remains, in what is being reborn, in the breath of 5 children, and the stillness of a man learning how to feel again, and in the quiet footsteps of a woman of faith who simply answered when love knocked. The next morning begins with laughter. Not loud, not chaotic, but free. The kind that bubbles up from a place long sealed. Mira chases Elijah around the garden, their bare feet wet with dew. Elias builds a tiny tower of stones near the flower bed. Noah hums to himself. Painting on a wooden board, Grace gave him 5 stick figures beneath a giant yellow sun. Danvers watches from the porch steps. He sips warm tea. No screens, no schedules, no meetings to rush off to. Just morning, just presence. Grace steps outside with a folded blanket over her arm. She lays it out under the oak tree and sits on it like she's done it for years. She opens her notebook. But instead of writing, she draws today. Her fingers move slowly, steadily, like the lines have been waiting in her for a long time. Danvers walks over. He doesn't ask permission. He just sits beside her. "What are you drawing?" he asks. "Roots." He glances over. It's a tree, not quite realistic. More symbolic. The trunk is wide, the branches reach. But it's what's beneath that catches his breath. 5 roots, all intertwined. All growing downward, not away. "That's them," he says. Grace nods. "And this," she says softly, drawing another smaller root beside the others, "is you." Danvers stares, then quietly adds another line, a 6th root. Grace watches his hand. "That one?" she asks. He doesn't answer immediately, but his voice comes steady. "Lillian." Grace closes the notebook gently and sets it in her lap. "She never left," Grace says. "You just stopped listening for her." Danvers closes his eyes. Listens now. Birdsong. Laughter. Breath. In the quiet, he hears her again. The voice he thought time had erased. Soft. Patient. Steady. "Take care of them, Danvers. Not with walls, with wonder." That afternoon, Danvers calls for the housekeeper, for the gardener, for the staff he'd kept at a distance. They gather in the parlor, unsure, curious. He enters not with his usual stiffness, but with open hands. "We're making changes," he begins. Some raise brows. He smiles gently. "This house was built with silence, but from now on it will be filled with story, with life, with breath." He gestures to Grace. "She's not just staff. She's the one who taught us how to listen again." He turns to the children, who peek through the hallway arch. "They're not broken. They never were. They just needed someone to speak their language." He pauses. His voice trembles. "So did I." There's no applause, just silence. But not the cold kind, the full kind. Later, he finds Grace in the playroom. She's reading aloud from a picture book. The children lean against her legs, heads resting on her lap, her shoulders, her side. She looks up when he enters. He doesn't speak. He just walks over, kneels, and opens his arms. The children climb into him like they've been waiting for that moment all their lives. Grace watches, then continues reading. Danvers doesn't ask her to stop. He just listens. That night, Grace sets out 6 teacups. She pours, one for each child, one for herself, and one for Danvers. They sit around the kitchen island, not like strangers in a mansion, but like family. Danvers raises his cup. To beginnings. The children raise theirs, some spill, some forget, but the gesture lands. Grace lifts hers. To presence. They clink and drink. Later, when the children sleep, Danvers finds himself outside, standing beside the 6th stone. The wreath still hangs, weathered now, but beautiful. He kneels beside it, whispers, "I see you." The wind stirs. Leaves fall. He places a candle at the base, lights it, watches it flicker, and for the first time, he doesn't cry out of grief. He cries out of gratitude. Behind him, Grace steps into the grass. She says nothing, just sits beside him. They watch the flame dance together. In the quiet, a soft voice rises, Grace humming. The lullaby again. But now, Danvers hums too. Off-key, unsure, but present. The children hear it from the window. They hum with him. A house once built by systems and sorrow now breathes with light. And lullaby. And love. One chapter remains. But the ending is no longer heavy. It's home. The mansion wakes in golden light. The rain has stopped. The windows are open. Curtains billow in the breeze like sails ready to move forward. Danvers stands at the top of the staircase, watching his children scatter joyfully below Elijah, pushing a toy cart, Mira giggling behind a pillow, Elias humming as he lines up stones across the edge of the carpet. Noah is reading aloud now. Not many words, but enough. And Grace is there, weaving between them, barefoot, steady, calm, no uniform, no title, just her, a woman of faith who walked into a house of silence and stayed. Danvers walks down the stairs, slowly, carefully, as if the steps are no longer just wood, but sacred ground. At the base of the stairs, Elias sees him. He doesn't run. He walks and lifts his arms. Danvers picks him up without thinking, his arms now used to holding again, used to presence. Elias rests his head on his father's shoulder and whispers, "You came back." Danvers' throat tightens. "I did," he says, and he means it. Later, in the garden, they all gather. The children sit around the flower bed they planted. Tiny green shoots have begun to rise from the soil. Elijah points to one, eyes wide. "It's real." Danvers kneels beside them. "They grew because we took care of them." Mira looks up. "Like us?" He nods. "Exactly like you." Grace kneels beside him. Together, they begin placing small wooden signs near the shoots, each carved with a name, one for each child, and one more. The sixth stone still stands nearby. Grace sets a bouquet beside it. Danvers touches her hand, then places a new stone beside the old one, not to replace, but to honor. He's carved a single word into it, forever. The children stand around the stones in silence. Then, one by one, they begin to hum. Not perfectly, not in sync, but together. It's the lullaby. The one Lillian wrote, the one Grace remembered, the one Danvers finally learned. It fills the garden, soft and holy, until it blends with the rustle of leaves and the breath of spring. Later that day, Danvers calls a family meeting. The children sit cross-legged in the living room. Grace sits beside them. Danvers holds a large box. He opens it. Inside, 5 small books, notebooks. Each child gets one. Inside the cover, their name, written in Danvers' hand. Elijah opens his first. The first page reads, "You are seen, you are loved, your voice matters." Each book is filled with blank pages, and beside each notebook, a small wooden pencil. Danvers says, "You can draw, you can write, you can just scribble, but these books are yours, to tell your story." Elias clutches his tightly. Mira's eyes shine. Noah hugs his to his chest. Danvers places the last book in Grace's hands. She hesitates, opens the cover. Inside, "You helped us begin again." She doesn't speak, but her eyes do. That evening, the sun sets slow and pink across the hills. The windows of the mansion glow soft. From a distance, it no longer looks like a fortress. It looks like a home. In the playroom, the children fall asleep together on a shared blanket. No cameras watch them now. No monitors blink. Only Grace, humming gently as she tucks them in. Danvers watches from the doorway. Not from fear, from love. He steps in quietly and kneels beside her. Their hands meet over the blanket. Grace whispers, "What happens now?" He looks at the children, then at her. "Now," he says, "we live." She smiles. He continues, "And we remember, not with sorrow, but with breath." She leans into him, and they sit in silence. Outside, the seeds keep growing. Inside, the children dream. And in a house once full of emptiness, lullabies rise again, not from one voice, but many. A harmony, a home, and in the distance, though unseen, a woman's presence smiles not as a ghost, but as a gift. Because love, once rooted, never truly leaves. It lives, quietly, forever and ever. Amen.